When a Hollywood actor's surveillance company spends millions lobbying for laws that force 450 million Europeans into mass surveillance while making billions in profits, well, that's not child protection, is it? That's just capitalism with a conscience-washing PR campaign. And somehow, the same officials writing these laws keep getting mysteriously hired by the companies that then profit from them. What are the bloody odds? Right, let's talk about the EU's chat control law, or as I like to call it, how to build a surveillance state while pretending you give a toss about kids. The European Union wants to mandate that every messaging app, every platform, every digital communication tool scans all your private messages for illegal content. WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, the lot. They're calling it child protection. Privacy advocates are calling it mass surveillance. I'm calling it the most sophisticated regulatory capture scam in European history. And at the center of this entire bloody mess, Kelso from That 70s Show. No, really, Ashton Kutcher's surveillance company has spent over 600,000 euros lobbying EU officials for laws that would mandate the technology that they sell. It's like if McDonald's lobbied for mandatory daily cheeseburger consumption laws, except instead of making you fat, they just make you surveilled. But I am sure it's all just a coincidence that a Hollywood actor's tech company stands to make billions from European surveillance contracts. Pure altruism, obviously.
I'm here today to defend the right to pursue happiness. And I believe that it is incumbent upon us as citizens of this nation, as Americans, to bestow that right. Now, this is about the time when I start talking about politics that the internet trolls tell me to stick to my day job. So I'd like to talk about my day job. My day job is as the chairman and the co-founder of Thorn. We build software to fight human trafficking and the sexual exploitation of children.
Okay, well, let me introduce you to Thorn, Ashton Kutcher's non-profit that somehow generates $19 million in annual revenue. Their CEO, Julia Cordua, earns $333,000 a year. For context, that's more than most actual government officials make while supposedly fighting the same problem. 8 employees earn 6-figure salaries at this charity. They've invested nearly $1 million in Kutcher's venture capital firm, which holds $115 million in assets. This isn't non-profit. It's a profit-generating surveillance company wearing a charity costume to the regulatory capture ball. Here's where it gets properly mental, though. Thorn spent 600,000 euros on EU lobbying in 2022 alone. They held 12 documented high-level meetings with EU Commission officials. Privacy advocates? They were refused meetings 3 times. Commissioner Ylva Johansson literally wrote to Thorn's CEO, "We have shared many moments on the journey to this proposal." Shared many moments? Christ, it sounds like they're planning a wedding, not surveillance legalization affecting 500 million people. But wait, there's more. It somehow gets worse. 2 former Europol officials who were handling AI pilot projects for child abuse detection were hired directly by Thorn in 2022. No cooling off period, no conflict of interest review, just straight from regulating surveillance tech to selling surveillance tech. One of them, Cathal Delaney, immediately resigned as a German parliament lobbyist and started attending Europol meetings as a Thorn representative, meeting with his former bloody colleagues to sell them the technology he used to regulate. The European Ombudsman ruled this constitutes maladministration, which is EU speak for "this is completely dodgy, but we're too polite to say it's corruption." Antonio Labrador Jimenez, an EU Commission official, sits on the same board as Thorn's CEO. Eva Kahle, who co-organized summits with Kutcher, was later arrested for the Qatargate bribery scandal. Even Commission President Ursula von der Leyen did personal video calls with Kutcher for promotional purposes. At what point do we stop calling this stakeholder engagement and start calling what it is? Corporate networking masquerading as governance. Well, now let's follow the money properly. The Oak Foundation, run by former US diplomat Douglas Griffiths with a $450 million annual budget, has invested over $24 million in chat control lobbying since 2019. They funded Thorn, the ECPAT network, We Protect Global Alliance, and PR agencies to create what looks like grassroots support for surveillance legislation. €219,000 from Thorn to We Protect, $2.33 million to We Protect from Oak Foundation, $2.79 million from ECPAT to EU Digital Policy. What a remarkable coincidence that all these totally independent organizations support the exact same surveillance agenda that would make Thorn millions. Thorn's business model is beautifully corrupt. Lobby governments to mandate the tech you sell, then profit from the inevitable contracts. Their software subscriptions doubled from 2020 to 2021, reaching $3.8 million, while they secured $4.3 million in US Department of Homeland Security contracts. The EU represents massive market expansion, 450 million citizens subject to mandatory scanning across 27 member states. That's subscription-based revenue scaling with mandatory adoption. It's not just surveillance capitalism, it's surveillance mercantilism. Of course, this brilliant plan isn't original. It's copying the same failed scheme that's already wasted millions of taxpayer pounds in the UK while enriching politically connected companies. The UK's Digital Economy Act 2017, a £2 million complete failure abandoned in 2019. The most egregious bit involved MindGeek, owner of Pornhub, controlling 90% of major adult sites while developing Age ID as their verification solution. Think about that for a moment. The same company hosting adult content was positioned to profit from restricting access to it. They created the problem and the profitable solution. It's like an arsonist running the fire department. The current UK Online Safety Act, 1,800% increase in VPN usage has undermined the entire system. Facial recognition is defeated by video game screenshots. Legitimate users are locked out while bad actors easily circumnavigate everything. Reddit now requires government IDs and biometric data handled by Persona, a US company operating from a shared space behind a bar. Because nothing says data security like processing sensitive personal information above a pub. Here's the kicker. The technology being mandated literally cannot work as advertised. 14 of the world's most respected cryptographers, including the blokes who invented modern encryption, published a study concluding client-side scanning creates serious security and privacy risks for all of society. Swiss federal police report 80% false positives. Ireland reports only 20% of alerts contain actual abuse material. Researchers demonstrate 99.9% of images can be modified to evade detection. The technology doesn't work. Everyone knows it doesn't work. But it creates surveillance infrastructure that can be expanded for any purpose that the government fancies. And here's the tell. The proposal exempts government and military accounts from scanning. If it's safe enough for child protection, why aren't government officials subject to it? Because they know exactly how dangerous this technology is. They just don't think you deserve the same privacy. See, chat control isn't really about the immediate privacy violations. It's about building surveillance infrastructure for future expansion. Once client-side scanning exists on every European device, governments can modify it to detect anything. Political dissent, hate speech, journalistic sources, religious materials, criticism of authorities. This is the historical pattern. NSA terrorism, data gets shared with drug enforcement, UK age verification for pornography expands to social media with biometric requirements. Australia's child protection verification becomes a comprehensive digital ID system. The government exemptions prove this is population control and not child protection. Creates a two-tier system where authorities maintain secure communications while forcing surveillance on everyone else. Denmark has made this their top priority with an artificial October deadline, using what critics call political blackmail to rush through surveillance infrastructure before opposition can mobilize. So there you have it. The EU chat control law, regulatory capture so complete it could be taught in business schools as a masterclass in corporate influence. A Hollywood actors' surveillance company spent millions lobbying for legislation mandating the technology they sell, generating billions in public contracts while creating surveillance infrastructure that threatens democratic society. The same failed schemes that wasted millions in the UK are now being exported to Europe by the same companies, using the same corrupt methods, with the same officials moving between regulatory jobs and private sector positions. Child safety has become the ultimate policy laundering mechanism, allowing surveillance expansion that would immediately be rejected if proposed honestly as population monitoring. This isn't about protecting children. It's about profit, power, and surveillance infrastructure. And they're using the most vulnerable members of society as human shields to implement mass surveillance, violating the rights of hundreds of millions of Europeans. Well, that's your fine print for today. If this made you angry, then good, it bloody well should. Share it, because the surveillance industrial complex is betting you won't pay attention until it's too late. Just look what happened in the UK. And remember, when politicians claim they're protecting children by removing your privacy, they're usually protecting something else entirely. See you next time.